Shalom, buenos dias, and howdy. How do those three go together?
We're going to show you today. Hi, welcome to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. I'm Joshua and this is Alyssa. And we are going to go back to Washington, D.C. and show you some more of the city.
Actually, one of my favorite parts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, now you do.
Okay. Well, here's one of Alyssa's favorite parts. So what do you like about the Lincoln Memorial?
Well, I really like Abraham Lincoln as a president, and my mom really liked him, so we studied him a lot. And we went to a couple of like the famous sites growing up, like his birthplace, and we went to a museum and saw his wife's dresses. We went to a log cabin and saw all sorts of cool stuff. So
did
really
you go to like the little village?
I think so. And we saw a guy all dressed up with Abraham Lincoln hat on, and my brother was super scared of him.
Oh, I remember that part of the story.
So the first time we went to DC, I was very excited about seeing the Lincoln Memorial because I really liked Abraham Lincoln as president.
Oh, cool. Well, this is the Lincoln Memorial, if you have not already figured that out. If you look on the back of a penny, which has Abraham Lincoln on the front, you will see, or you should see, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Not all pennies have that.
True.
But most of them do. So this is at the Washington Monument looking at the Lincoln Memorial with the reflecting pool in between, and closer to us in the picture is the World War II Memorial that we showed you last week. Yeah. So now if we travel to the other end of that reflecting pool, which is really, really, really long, it just doesn't look like it in this picture, but it's a long walk. On the other end, from the Lincoln Memorial facing the Washington Monument, this is the view. And if you turn back around, there is the Lincoln Memorial. And it's funny when you go there because after people are done, they like picnic on the steps out in front. And so as you get closer, you can see all these people who, they're done looking at it, and now they're just sitting there and resting.
Well, it's in the shade, too.
Yeah. And then once you get inside, there he is. A bigger, much bigger than life-size statue of Abraham Lincoln. And it's really busy on there. On either side, you can see there's columns, and then behind that, there are some things on the wall to read. I don't remember what was on each wall. I had pictures of them, but I didn't have them here, obviously.
I think part of the Emancipation Proclamation is on one wall.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe part of his Gettysburg Address or something like that. It's two very famous speeches.
Yep. So those are in really big writing on either side. And here's a closer picture of Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president. And here's a view from outside. Just a nice little sun going down picture. And now we're going to show you a picture that most people don't get to see of the Lincoln Memorial. But if you ever get the chance, it's worth it. There it is on July 4th, Independence Day. They shoot fireworks off over the Potomac River, and right behind the Lincoln Memorial. And so it's really cool.
Definitely worth the time that we waited there. It got a little bit cloudy, so then it was hard to see some of the fireworks. But it was just cool to be in Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July when there were all these events taking place and lots of people there. And it was pretty exciting. You can also, when we were watching the fireworks, we could also see a little bit of the Jefferson Memorial, I think, too. But as all the smoke and stuff built up from the fireworks, we saw less and less and less. But it still was cool to be there.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was a lifetime experience, or a once in a lifetime experience. I would do it again if I had the opportunity because, yeah, it's just pretty cool. So there you go, the Lincoln Memorial.
Yep.
One of your favorites.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something new.
I got some more story to tell.
Okay.
Okay, you'll have to listen closely because my voice is kind of quiet. But we ended our story last time with Yungang and his friends. Maybe remember that group of boys that they're kind of causing problems. They went to the missionary's house, right? And they decided they were going to make a mess of the missionary's house, and they were throwing stuff all over the place, and then the police showed up. Well, the police took them right to the police station, and more than anything, Yungang dreaded having his family come and have to come get him at the police station. And remember, he had thought nobody would know. We'll just sneak into the missionary's house and nobody will even know we're there. Well, somebody always knew, right? God always knows what we're up to, even if he didn't think anybody was watching them. So his parents picked him up, and then they had to go to a special school for boys, and they had to go to a judge and go to more things because they had broken so many rules. And his mom pleaded with the judge. She said, please, 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 I will punish him at home if you'll just let me take him home. And the judge agreed. And so Yungang went home, and the other boys did, but they broke up the gang of boys, said that they couldn't be together anymore. So Yungang went home, and he had to just work on the tea plantation. He couldn't really hang out with his friends. If they had to go to Taipei on business, his mom was very specific about where he got to go and who he got to hang out with, so he didn't really get much time with his friends anymore. And he was disappointed about that. He really wanted to keep hanging out with his communist friends and getting the group going, but he wasn't really getting a chance to do that. And he had just gotten those guys together, and they had just started listening to him, and he thought, they're never going to learn stuff about China and all the things they need to know to be true communists if I'm not there to teach them. But instead, he just spent his time working hard at the tea plantation. Well, after his 10th birthday, it was really close to Chinese New Year. And at Chinese New Year, all the shops get decorated. They do special events on all the different places. And in a nearby church in Taipei, because they were visiting their family in Taipei again, there was going to be a special kids club. So his mom and his aunt said he and his cousin should go to this kids club. And they agreed, but their plan was they would go and cause problems at the kids club instead of actually going to listen to what the teacher had to say. So they thought this was a great plan. They'll go in there and they'll just cause problems for the whole meeting and disrupt the whole thing, just like they really wanted to do more than anything. So they went to the club, and there was a missionary and a teacher and a song leader, and they did songs, and the boys kind of goofed around a little bit. But then the teacher said, I have a story to tell you about a man who became rich by lying and cheating. And Yungang thought, this is a story I need to hear. Somebody who got rich by lying and cheating. Of course, this is great. So he listened really closely to this story. And the lady told the story, and she was a Chinese lady. She told the story about how there was this man, and this story was recorded in the Bible, and this man was a tax collector. So he was supposed to collect the money from the people, and then he had to give it to the government. Well, he would ask the people for more money than he had to give to the government, and he would keep that money and then just pay the government whatever they wanted. So really, this man was stealing from people. And all the people in the village knew that he was doing it, and he became really rich like this by taking money that didn't belong to him. Well, this man heard that Jesus was coming to his village, and he thought he needed to meet Jesus and know who Jesus was. So he tried to get to the middle of his village, and he lived in a big village called Jericho, and there were so many people crowding around Jesus, and he was such a short man, there was no way he thought he was going to be able to even see Jesus. So he got this plan. He climbed up a tree, and he thought, if I'm up in the tree, I'll be able to see Jesus when he comes by. And guess what? Jesus came to his tree, and he looked up in the tree, and he told this man, you know what? Why don't you come down, and I'd like to come to your house today. And everybody in the village, I'm sure their eyes got really wide, like, Jesus, do you know whose house you're going to? But this man was excited. He was excited to welcome Jesus to his house. And when Jesus came to his house, he explained to this man named Zacchaeus that he had made bad choices. And Jesus explained that his bad choices of taking money from people that didn't belong to him, that he was stealing. And Zacchaeus realized that he had done that. and that he was a sinner and he needed a savior and that Jesus was going to be his savior. So he promised Jesus he was going to help the poor people and then he was going to repay those people who he had taken money from that day. And the lady said, you know what? A lot of boys and girls and grown-ups make bad choices and they are sinners and they need a savior. And the Bible tells us the wages of sin is death. And really, if Zacchaeus hadn't trusted Jesus as his savior, his penalty someday would have been death. He would have been separated from God forever in a terrible place called hell. Young wasn't really interested in this part of the story. He did like the beginning of the story, though. And the lady asked for all the boys and girls to close their eyes and bow their heads. Young was kind of just like thinking about the story, but he realized his cousin next to him was very, very still. Seemed very attentive. And the lady asked when she was finished praying, she asked if anyone else would like to ask questions that they could come close and talk to her. So Young, of course, turned around and walked right out, but he realized his cousin wasn't with him. His cousin had gone up and was talking to the lady. And a little bit, he saw his cousin bow his head, and he realized his cousin was now becoming a Christian. Man, they had gone to this meeting just to cause problems, and now his cousin was becoming a Christian, which meant he couldn't be part of Young's gang anymore. He couldn't be a communist and a Christian, because communists say there is no God, and a Christian obviously is believing in a God. So it made him really angry. He thought his cousin is now a traitor, and he thought, well, how am I going to get him to figure out to do what's right? Well, to do what's right in what Young thought. So he got together the group of boys secretly, very secretly, because they weren't supposed to be getting together from those orders from the police. And he told them about what had happened with his cousin. And he said, we need to convince him that it's not a good idea to become a Christian. So he's going to be coming this way to walk me home. And I want you to kind of just beat him up a little bit. Mostly to just scare him. Don't actually hurt him, but just enough to scare him so then he doesn't want to be a Christian anymore. So the gang of boys did that, and they did beat him up pretty good, and he had a lot of cuts and bruises. But Young kind of stayed in the shadows. He didn't do anything, and then he walked home with his cousin, and his aunt bandaged up all of his cousin's wounds and stuff. And a little bit later, Young saw him, and he was praying, and he was talking to God, and his cousin was asking God to forgive those boys, and then to help him love them, and to help those boys know who Jesus was too. I thought, wow, why is he so happy even though so many bad things have happened and he just got beat up? And he's still choosing to just talk to God calmly? He must have a lot of peace, and that was something Young still didn't have. He really just had a lot of anger and frustration in his heart. Well, the family got all together for their last big feast of the festival, and once again, Young's dad noticed that the idols weren't out. And his uncle said, do you remember how we used to have to smear molasses on the idols' face to keep them from telling the bad things that we've done? Young's dad nodded, and his uncle said, see, we don't need it anymore, because we know we can talk to God directly, and we can tell him what we've done, and we know that he'll forgive us. And we don't have to worry about God's talking to other things. We have a lot more peace this way. Well, while they were sitting at the table, a messenger came from the tea plantation. And the messenger said their really great worker, Wani, was very, very sick. And the doctors were worried that he was going to die. And you're going to have to come back next time to find out what happens to Wani.
No.
Yep. Now you have to come back next time, too.
Well, I was planning on it anyway, but...
Well, that's a good thing.
All right. Okay, today we are going to tell you another story about some people who served on the field and they have now retired. Some more friends from Missionary Acres, where Jeanette is at, my sister. And so let's take a look at them. Their names are Terry and Yvonne Miller. Now, Mr. Terry is no longer here on the earth, and so this is going to be told to us from the perspective of Yvonne Miller about their ministry. So here's a picture of her. And she and her husband Terry served as missionaries in Israel, Argentina, St. Louis, Missouri, and Texas
Wow.
for a total of 34 years. I know. So when I first read that, I thought, man, what in the world did they do? They retired in 2010 to move to Missionary Acres, and her husband died in February 2019, so just a couple years ago. They met while they were studying at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and Terry had a burden and love for Jewish people. And at the time, he worked at a Jewish suit store. The Lord directed them together to minister to his special people, and they went to Israel. Now, just so you guys know, these are not their pictures. These are some pictures of Alyssa's from when she was in Israel, but just to give you an idea of where they were serving. A friend recently told her that there are many evangelical churches there, and they were there in 1966, and she wasn't aware of many churches, and they are called assemblies now, which actually makes sense because it's the same word in the Bible, just we translate it differently. When they were there, they had a colportage ministry. Have you ever heard that before?
Mm-mm.
Me neither. So I had to look it up, and what it is distributing books and tracts.
I've never heard that word.
I looked at the word and I thought, is that a typo? And I looked it up, and it's exactly what that word is, colportage. It's distributing religious books and tracts. So that's what they did while they were there. And as I read through the rest of this, you'll start to understand. It'll kind of all come together. She is planning to go to Israel with a tour group in 2022, and she is sure that she will see many changes. Her husband was a pastor of a small church in Argentina for a short time. Imagine going from Israel to Argentina.
That'd be quite the change.
And they also had a Jewish ministry there.
Oh.
While in Texas for 8 years, they were busy with activities of a local church assisting the pastor and his wife. And one of her favorite jobs was to sell Bibles at a flea market. So once again, she's distributing books, Bibles. And then they lived in St. Louis. And these are still pictures of Israel, but they lived in St. Louis for 17 years, and they ministered to Jewish people and had a tract table at 3 college campuses. So it was a joy to share the gospel with students from many countries. And so, yeah, they went all over the world serving Jewish people, and primarily through distribution of materials. Some of her favorite foods were falafel.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and I don't blame her. All the time. And then they also had tomato and cucumber salad that they ate for breakfast. And she often makes empanadas.
Oh, that's a South American.
Yep. And then gnocchis is a delicious pasta from half flour and half potato.
Oh.
Like the soup.
Yep.
Yep.
I like that soup.
She enjoys teaching a beginner Sunday school class right now, and she also plays the piano for congregational singing at church when needed. She said she would appreciate prayer for some unsaved friends. I won't give you their names here just in case, for whatever reason, those people may watch this, but their names begin with M, 4 people, and D and S. So you can pray for her 6 friends who are unsaved, who she hopes to share the gospel with. And so 34 years in ministry around different countries.
Places.
Yeah. And now still serving God in her local church very faithfully. And so we are thankful that she would share that with us, and for their faithfulness in ministry. And pray for her as she still sees the need for people to be saved and wants to reach them.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you come back next week for the last part of our missionary story and learn about somebody else and see some more of DC.
Yep, it's going to be a good one. So we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.